Welcome to Complaining About Video Games podcast, where we have decided to talk about video games, the culture, and hardware. We, being myself, Canadian Rage, and my co-host, Mr. Ecko, believe that we can shed some light on the industry that's starting to fail us. We believe that through complaining about the issues, we can illuminate some problems and start a discussion about the solutions. Today's episode, we will be talking about Microsoft and where we felt that they have gone wrong in the market and how they could possibly fix it. This is Complain About Video Games, the podcast, episode 1, Microsoft sucks at consoles. So to introduce myself, first, I am Canadian Rage, and this is my co-host.
I'm Mr. Ecko, and Microsoft indeed does suck at consoles in many ways.
We're going to discuss it a lot. So, to start off the podcast, we're going to talk about the Xbox naming scheme. These guys can't name a console to save their lives. I refuse to believe that they know what they're doing. Like, I honestly don't think they know what they're doing anymore.
It made sense for two consoles, I believe. I think Xbox to Xbox 360 was cool. I hoped for the 720, but it never happened.
Yeah, I really wanted to see the 720. Never became a thing.
Just said no.
The meme just never ever ended up happening. It's disappointing, but then they made it worse.
To be honest.
It really is. So let's start off with the names. I honestly think this is where they started going wrong. It's confusing, makes no sense, the scheme's all over the place, and as a consumer, it drives me nuts. So we first start off with, on screen, got the Xbox Original, big old brick.
Xbox Original, also known as One sometimes.
Also known as the One. Then we have the 360 Arcade, so the first 360, the 360 Elite, the S, and the E. So that's 4 different 360 consoles. Then we have the Xbox One, just blow it up a bit, the One S, the One X, and then the Series S and X, which we're currently going to be talking about today.
So the naming, I think, is really awful when you get into Xbox One S and X and Series S and X, because when these kids' parents, especially, are looking for these consoles, it's confusing, because they're not buying it because they are playing it. They're getting it for their children.
Right, and I feel like no parent's gonna give a damn about what's called or what it does. Their kid's gonna say, I want the X or the S, and they're gonna show up at the store and there's gonna be 2 S's and 2 X's, depending on which one you're looking at. It makes no sense.
And you know some of these parents are getting the cheaper one. I don't blame them.
Absolutely. But they will get whichever one is the cheapest, and depending on the time frame, it could be the 1S. So some kid could be getting some last gen console thinking they're getting the new.
Christmas is about to
suck. Christmas could be very unfortunate for these kids.
Legitimately.
So, like I started off, we're going to talk about the problems. Let's talk about some solutions. What could we call these consoles? Because they've iterated 4 different consoles in the 360 generation alone.
At this point, I'm not sure how much we could help it. Let's start with where they really went wrong. Like we said, we loved Xbox and Xbox 360. But as previously said, the Xbox original was constantly called the Xbox One at first. And then in the 3rd generation, they decided to call that the One and switch it up on us.
All right, so let's...
causing a mess of confusion.
Let's start our foundation at the 360 makes sense, the original makes sense. Even if the 360 is a weird name, it makes sense because it's iterative, it's more than the One. And then they named it the Xbox One. 360 is just
classic and you know it too.
Yeah,
so I don't know why they wouldn't keep going with that, because people didn't even really say Xbox anymore. They said 360. Hey, do you want to play 360 later? You want to hop on Xbox? Iconic. Hop on 360?
It was popular.
It's iconic, yeah.
It was iconic. So let's start with the Xbox One. What should we name the Xbox One instead?
Definitely 720.
Yeah, definitely 720. I think they could.
If you could just argue the original was 0 degrees or some garbage.
Yeah, they could always go with something ridiculous later on. They could go 1080.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
They could have kept going with the meme, and arguably.
What's amazing is that for the Series S and X with 4K, they could have found a way to make it 1440 possibly. If they called the One S or the One X 1080 maybe.
Yeah, they could be like the 1080p console,
a brand new avenue,
and the 1440p console. They could have played around with it. At the very least, 720 would have made a little bit of sense, or they could have called the Xbox 3.
Yeah.
So we know what we're looking at.
Oh, the Xbox One's really just a bland name for a console.
The Xbox
You're
One
not
never
supposed to
made
really be
sense.
excited, but
I
the
always
console
found
name
it
isn't
was
like, oh, I'm
frustrating.
excited, but yeah.
I always found it frustrating because, say you were looking up the original Xbox, your search results can get mixed up based on that alone. So if you're a parent and you say you went to eBay or something, I want the Xbox
Yeah.
One, it might bring up the original Xbox. And then
Yeah.
your kid's gonna have a real bad Christmas because his friends are all playing Halo 5 or whatever was on the console at the time being, and you're
Yeah.
got Halo 1. Not a good time.
uh,
So
this kid is playing on Pixel Machine while they're watching 1080.
can't even load
That'd
up
be awful.
a YouTube video on the original Xbox, and they're having the time of their lives. So
Yeah.
Xbox One should call the Xbox 3. Then we have the Xbox One S and X. We could have called that thing the 3S and 3X. Could have been pretty
Or even if
simplistic.
they wanted to go with the lettering scheme, why in the next generation after it do you think S and X is proper again? All you changed was this one to series.
Well, the
That's
weird thing is the
confusing as hell.
360 had an S and an E, and then the Xbox
Yeah,
One had an S
that's
and an
confusing
X.
as well.
Yeah, so they have SX,
They kept
SE,
the
SX,
S from
SX.
360. They enjoyed that letter. They got
I
rid of the
almost,
E.
I
Added
almost want to say that
an
it's
X.
basically just a meme calling it the Series
Yeah,
X.
I think it might be a marketing ploy at this point because people memeing on it.
Yeah, but the
I think
problem I
even
have is that
the designs are marketing ploys for how stupid they look.
my problem is that marketing employees aside, it's confusing, and even if it does work and people will go to buy it, when they actually go to buy the thing, it's
They're
so
still so
confusing.
confused it doesn't work. If it was a
Exactly.
ploy, I think it was just an amalgamation of unintelligent
Decisions.
meetings. A lot of people
So
are just not doing things right.
to play devil's advocate, the way they might see it is that if you get into Best Buy and you got to ask the Best Buy guy about the product, he's got a chance to upsell you. So maybe they get more sales out of that. My thing is that you look at the PlayStation camp, and it's just simplistic. PS1,
I think that the whole
PS2,
point of console is
PS3.
that it's accessible and it's easy. You
Right.
shouldn't make it confusing in any aspect,
Yeah, absolutely.
especially for your consumer.
Yeah, you're trying to sit down and play a console game. You're not trying to figure out which one's the one that's got to do what you need to do.
Yeah, I think especially comes into play with these kids that are on console, because it's not like they're gonna go out and build themselves computers either.
No,
Part
I
of
know.
console is that a big audience is children. They're limited in some aspects.
Right, they're just trying to get in and do what they
Just
want
get
to
into
do.
gaming, yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at the PlayStation side, you can get a PS4 or what's going to be a PS5 soon enough. And it just makes sense. It's like
Oh,
the
PlayStation's always
PS5.
been simple and it's
Yeah,
iconic. Everyone knows
you
PlayStation.
know it's going to be better. You know what you're
Yeah,
getting into. Because if you walk in the door, you look at PS4, you look at PS5, you know the PS5 is a better spec. It just is. It's not going to be
yeah,
any like difficulties, there's no confusion. And with the PS lineups, they have maybe a slim model, and that's about it. They've
yeah.
had
I believe Slim and Pro for the PS4, and it's pretty simple.
That's pretty.
Slim Pro.
You know what you're getting. It's like
It's
this
not
is the one that's
lettering
regular.
and
Yeah, this one's
not.
that's regular. This one that's
Yep,
smaller, and this is the one that's pro. So it's supposed to be
this
better,
is
right?
4K.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious. This is the original
You wouldn't
PS4.
even
This is
have
the
to
Slim
know it's
PS4. This is
4K.
4K PS4.
You don't even have to know it's 4K. You just know by the pro moniker that it's the better version of the console.
Yeah,
It's more
that's the
powerful.
newest. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
quite a simple.
when I look at the S and the X, I don't see powerful from S or X. S is supposed to stand for slim, I'm assuming. But what's the X stand for? X is supposed to be good or gamer or extra. I don't know.
It's I don't know. It's
It doesn't make any
Xbox, man.
sense.
They like X. They're like
We have X's in
we
our
got
X.
two X in our names.
How do we add more
So
X's?
how do we add more X's? Yeah, how do we get another X in here?
Is it supposed to be
Like
sexy like the Xbox Series
X.
X has 3 X's? Right?
So many X's.
I don't know.
It's just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Makes no sense. I think our next topic, we're going to move into the actual
This
hardware.
hardware. Yeah.
Yeah, because we have two
The newest
new
systems,
versions.
correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
two new versions of the console now. coming out soon. The Series X and Series X. I still think that's the most ridiculous naming scheme ever. I want to name it something else as a nickname.
I'm thinking mini fridge and speakerphone are the new names.
We'll call it speakerphone for S and mini fridge for the X.
I wish it had an X in it. I'm sorry, Xbox, but it's just a mini fridge.
Yeah, so the speakerphone.
The speakerphone has the S.
Speakerphone has no disk drive apparently, and is set at $299 USD. Yep. And the mini fridge, the X, is set at $499. With a 4K
So
UHD Blu-ray drive.
The S is just the digital version, and they've been saying they were going to put out a digital version for a while now, I believe, or at least like hinting at it.
They've been trying to push for a digital console for a long time. But
they had a digital 1S.
They did, and I don't know if it sold very well.
It didn't. People don't know about it.
Yeah, the problem is their marketing is brutal, and I think that's a core aspect. Like the core aspects of why Microsoft sucks at consoles is the fact that their marketing is bad.
You have an Xbox One, an Xbox One S, an Xbox One S digital, an Xbox One X. How many times are you
so
do
that just adds more consoles to the mix than we might.
Do you remember the Arcade or the Elite or the S or the E really at all?
No.
I remember the Slim. Was that the S?
Yeah, that was the S.
Because that's the only one there I remember other than the original. I never really played the Arcade or the Elite. I don't even remember seeing the E until fucking recently.
I never played on an E console, but I've played on the Arcade, the Elite, and the S.
Yeah.
So, like, I had a buddy that had an Elite, which I believe was a 60 or 120 gig hard drive on it. And that was the big deal, is that you could actually like get a lot of games saved on it.
Oh yeah.
Which, speaking of which,
I remember I just had the removable hard drive I put in. More.
So
space.
speaking
of which, I don't remember how much, but it was definitely enough for plenty of games.
With the S, right? The S has a 512 terabyte drive. The X has a 1 terabyte.
Yeah, I think both of those are low, to be honest.
They're
low.
This is supposed
to be the new generation of gaming, and the SSD is 1 terabyte.
But what I find strange is, so we're talking about how the S is a digital console. If it's a fully digital console, why only have 512?
Yeah, it's interesting that your fully digital option, you decided to go with less storage. Yeah. So if I want to play Call of Duty, the newest one, that's already the only pushing game 200 gigs. That's the only game you're going to be able to play.
There's not much options, and you have to delete.
Games are a lot bigger now, especially with all the 4K textures and everything. So I don't understand how any console is 1 terabyte. Should be 2 at least, in my opinion.
I think the digital version. For the Series X. I think the digital version makes sense to be 512 period, because if you're a digital console, that means your only option is to be pushing things to your SSD.
Yeah, you have no disk option in any way, shape, or form. And
then if you're gonna upgrade it, the 1 terabyte upgrade is 219 USD, I believe, is the rumor.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. So
if you're paying $299 for the console and the upgrade is $499, why would you just not get the $499?
Console. There's no point in getting that console. Is what they're doing.
It's just doesn't make any sense. It's a chicken and egg situation. Do I buy the lower edition and then buy the hard drive later? Or do I buy the bigger one?
Save up for the bigger one and maybe
you're
buy
already
it later.
Spending the money, you might as well. And it's a better console because it's got better specs in the thing, so you get a better SSD.
And you have a disk drive.
Yeah. If you want to play Blu-rays, which is really weird to me,
if you have Blu-rays too.
An Xbox is usually a Blu-ray device for most people, right? They watch the movies on it. So
that was one of the Xbox One's boasting aspects, is that you could connect stuff to it, and that it was Blu-ray and everything. You can connect your TV and your DVR.
It's supposed to be your whole machine, right? It's supposed to be your entertainment device. That's why
they had the input-output, and that's why people freaked out about the Xbox Series X only having one HDMI. But there was no understanding about the in and out on the Xbox One because it failed.
It was so bad. I remember the first time I plugged in an Xbox One, I accidentally plugged it into the out port, and I wasn't getting any picture.
It wasn't working.
Yeah,
I thought it was broken.
I was sitting there lost. I felt ridiculous because I knew about it going into it, but by the time I actually had the console myself, I forgot about it.
Oh yeah, it was awful. I was like, "What's going on?" Because no one cared about that. That was the most worthless feature they wasted time on. No one used it. I don't know a single person that used it.
Well, they marketed
Many
the
people
whole
don't even know
thing.
about it.
They marketed the device to be the TV center, so it's supposed to be a DVR.
Yeah.
It was supposed to work with like AT&T and all sorts of crazy things that never end up coming to fruition.
Yeah,
Because
and none of it. Exactly what I was gonna say. None of it came to fruition.
well,
Not a
because
single
when they
one.
went to go market it, the Internet Explorer, they lost their mind. They didn't want it at all. So they had to
Yeah.
backtrack and go, whoa, 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 we're just kidding, and figure it out
It's
again.
just for video games.
It's just a gaming console. We swear it wasn't TV.
Because that
Um,
could have been good. They could have done. They could have done good things with that.
so then on top of that, the lower edition console being digital only, no disk drive, smaller hard
Looking
drive.
stupid. Yeah.
Um, the other thing I wanted to mention was it makes no sense for the consumer that wants a lower price console because say someone's trying to save their money, spend on a lower price console, there's a good chance that they're not going to
The,
have the opportunities to have better internets. Maybe they're in a low
yeah. The
income
digital
area,
doesn't make. Yeah.
or
Sorry. Go on.
they may just not have options of internet. You never know. So it's a
Yeah. The
really odd
digital doesn't
thing.
make any sense because why would the disc tray make that much of a difference
Well, I can see where
too?
the cost saves are, but the weird thing is, why would you try to save that cost in your
Yeah.
market
What's the
where,
trade-in value though
yeah,
for
so the
trading
person,
in that disc tray?
yeah, they're
And
losing a
who are
lot.
you marketing to? It doesn't make sense in that.
And that consumer really misses out when they don't get that. And what's strange to me is that I didn't even think about this, but the Blu-ray aspect of it, um, if that person already has issues with the internet,
They
then
probably be watching Blu-rays,
yeah, they're probably watching Blu-rays. They're
discs.
probably not
I was
watching
gonna say
Netflix.
they're like also a person that wants. If I want to choose a lower console, I probably am still getting discs.
Yeah,
I'm
most
probably
likely.
not buying everything digitally. I may
Yeah.
be buying some discs with cash I have,
Hmm.
not often buying probably digital. The only thing you're really going to be buying is your membership to online and maybe a game, especially since these games are so massive. Like it's so ridiculous that Call of Duty is what almost 200 gigabytes.
At least.
Yeah, it's insane. How many games are you supposed to have on this thing, especially the digital one,
I'm
and no
assuming
discs? How many games are you playing? Two or three?
you'd want to have at least 5 games. I'm assuming if you're playing a new console, or 5 games at
Yeah.
any given time. It's debatable what
So
you would do,
if
but
as you're getting games as time passes, do you want to be deleting games just to play a game? Every time one game you want to play, you have to delete another one.
it'd be
You have to
ridiculous
just
because
cycle it if you're
you'd
playing
have to
different
re-download it.
games.
And I know in the states, some areas of the states still has bandwidth caps,
Yeah, yeah.
so you could be really screwed because you're setting yourself back more money if you end up hitting that cap. Like say I want to
So
re-download
the
Call of Duty and that's 200
yeah.
gigs. And I hit my cap and that's another like $30 in caps, and then I want to play the game online.
Hmm.
And it's just costing me extra.
Yeah, so the Xbox Digital costs more for either internet or you have to buy the upgrade, which is it even rumored to be 200 or is it like gonna
It
basically be
looks like it's
200?
gonna be $299 and $499 the announced costs.
No, I mean for the SSD upgrade
Oh, for the
for
SSD,
the
it's
S.
rumored that's $219 American.
Yeah.
I haven't
So
confirmed that rumor yet,
that's not
but
only ridiculous for an SSD, it's ridiculous that you'd even have to think about upgrading. And you're gonna have to
yeah,
bite the bullet somewhere, either by having good internet and paying for that or upgrading it.
either you're recycling
And you might
storage
even not
space
have the
or
option to have good internet.
yeah,
If you don't have fast internet, do you want to wait a day to download your game again or 5 hours to download your game again?
yeah, you're definitely
You're
pushing
going to be
off
waiting that long
how
for
much time you can
games?
do stuff. It definitely seems too ridiculous to be true.
It
So it
seems
doesn't
like we're
seem like
taking a step back. This is supposed to be the new generation
Well, it doesn't seem like
in this
Microsoft seems to know
aspect.
what their market is because it doesn't make sense for the cheap consumer because they're gonna have to upgrade anyways.
Yeah.
Like the storage space just isn't enough. It doesn't make sense
Yeah.
for the digital only consumer because it's still not enough space. You might as well buy the upgraded version. It comes with more space and a better console. It seems like a console just to be there, to force eyes on the newer console. It's currently saying it's a 1440p console, which I find extremely strange because if I'm playing a console, personally, I would want to be in front of a TV. And I don't know many TVs that are 1440p capable and 120 Hz. Because it's a weird gap between a 1080p TV and a 4K TV. Monitors
And
might
4K
be
TVs are quite expensive, and we're talking about the cheaper option here.
exactly. So for the
So it's an
consumer,
odd thing to boast, indeed.
that's going to be
Another
buying the
thing that just
digital
doesn't really
edition, it
make
doesn't make
sense.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
So
Just odd.
I don't get it personally. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's a lot of things about this console that don't really gel. Like it's an
That one's a
underpowered
big
system.
one. I can't really think of a great solution, especially because the previous generation, the Xbox One X, is better than the Xbox One S. What's the point of getting the One S? If you
The
have an
Series
Xbox
S.
One X,
See, that's the crazy thing is you already fall
Series
in the
S, sorry.
trap.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
you've
talking about it so much. I'm
already
saying One S and
fall into
yeah,
the trap of the terrible naming scheme. Like trying to decipher which one's which is so
yeah, that's
confusing. It
amazing.
makes no sense. So when we're talking about the different
By the way,
versions,
I own the One S too, so it's amazing that I got confused on that.
yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, okay.
So
It
you'd
just
think they
doesn't
would
make
figure it out,
sense.
but
The One X and the Series S, got it. It just doesn't make sense. Why not just keep your One X? If you have it, just why
yeah,
upgrade if you're not
if
going to
you
upgrade
already
to the
have a One
Series
X,
X?
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely if you have a One X, stick with what you got. By the looks of it,
because yeah, it's
because
weird.
it's
It's
backwards compatible as well. You're gonna be playing on both
most of the games coming out
generations.
are going to be on Xbox One as well.
Yeah, for the foreseeable future, they'll be on both. And that's the
Yeah.
funny thing is that the newer games don't look as good, which we'll talk about in a future episode,
Oh, most definitely.
because the hardware limitations. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, definitely tune in to Microsoft doesn't make good games.
yeah, that'll be
Next
episode
episode?
2.
Possibly.
Episode 2 for sure, for sure.
On
So
to the Xbox controller. It just wasn't innovative in any way.
yeah, I didn't
It's
see anything interesting from it. Didn't spark any joy personally.
I thought the share button was just a weak add-on to try to make it look like they kind of did something. You know how
Right?
sharing worked on the Xbox One? You
No, I
press the
don't.
Xbox button and you
Hmm.
press X to like record stuff, and it opens up your share menu like that. You just press your Xbox button to open up your share menu. You
So
can
it's a
find it easily
shortcut
like
key.
that. Yeah, to
Okay.
record things and take screenshots. And to go to the share menu, you simply press your Xbox button and I think go to a couple tabs to the right or left. So yeah, that middle button I think is just kind of useless. I
I
think it's
don't.
kind of crowded too because I've always found it just simple to have your select and your start button.
Yeah, it's weird. They seem to be adding face buttons that don't do anything for the game itself, but it's supposed to
Yeah,
be adding to the experience.
yeah, the
Um,
social experience.
yeah, which is weird because their social experience isn't good. Like sharing
Oh, their
on
party experience is awful. That's something we should go into actually.
they've
Maybe after controllers.
right. They've gotten completely rid of the sharing experience for PC. You can't share clips to Xbox players anymore. As
Yeah,
of
I tried to
September.
transfer over my stuff. I don't think I could transfer any of my clips over to PC without
Yeah,
like actually doing it.
the option's actually gone now. They don't
Doing
let
it
it
through the
happen
cloud
anymore.
is just ridiculous.
It is strange that they're trying to segment the social aspect of it,
Well,
but they do a poor
boasting
job at it
social,
by
saying
giving you the
that we're
button.
trying to make it more social because we're
Right,
giving you the
because
button.
imagine you buy this controller and use it on a computer. That button's just useless. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah, that is,
So
yeah,
it
quite
seems
true.
very like last second they must have shoehorned it in. Um, the other thing I noticed on it, big thing for me and a lot of people, is the
Yeah, it
D-pad.
reminds me of the good old days.
Yeah, the D-pad has returned to the old 360 style of D-pad, which some people might
Which
have
is
enjoyed.
odd.
I personally think it's not smart. It doesn't make sense. It was good for certain games. Gears of War, for me, it was easy to switch weapons and stuff. You could rock it.
Definitely, yeah.
But any game outside of a quick item selection menu, it doesn't work because if you go play a fighter on this, it looks like it's got directionals, but in the past hasn't been very good. No one's used it. No one used the
Yeah.
360 controller and said, "I love playing fighters on this." You
Yeah.
played PS4 or PS3 or I guess for 360 days it would have been PS3,
It's
but
such a weird thing to bring back. I don't know if they're expecting people to just not notice that like this was done before. Like I personally didn't like fully kind of realize. I just kind of thought about the Elite controller to be honest. And then I remembered that the Xbox 360 controller, you showed me this picture. I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it looked like. It just looks like they've it's a weird thing to bring back.
well, what kills
And
me. Go ahead.
it just I don't think it's gonna work for any new games. Maybe the newest Gears, but who plays that?
Yeah, that's something I don't know. Um, because they used to have a hybrid switching mechanism. Let's see if I can
Yeah.
find a picture here real quick. So they used to have this hybrid switching mechanism for the D-pad, so it was a proper D-pad and then a rocking D-pad, which I thought was the smartest thing. Let's see if I can grab a picture here. Nope.
Xbox.
Hold on. Grab the picture.
Yeah, it's definitely
Yeah, so I
an
got
unexpected controller change.
the new 360 switching D-pad and then the old 360 pad. So you can see how it's actually a D-pad versus the plate that they're going with here. Um, and what's really weird is the Xbox One had a, a T method of doing it as well, so it doesn't make any sense that they would go back to this. Seems like a waste, and I
It,
feel like a lot of people are upset about it.
it seems like a waste of time to think about things like that, bringing back something that people complained about back then.
Right, and
And
what's crazy is they fixed it
everyone,
by using replaceable D-pads.
yeah, and just unsegmented D-pads. But for some reason, they've just kind of just brought it back into the mix.
Yeah, they could have
I
left it
enjoyed being
the
able
way
to
that
do it with the
was.
Elite, just switching it, but I don't understand being held to that, especially when it's definitely doesn't work for a lot of games. I would switch it back and forth a lot. If it didn't work for the game I was playing, I'm not using it.
Yeah, I'm not sure which games it would work well with, because for
For me,
fighters,
it was
I don't think it
like
would.
games with hotkeys. So when I was rerunning Oblivion, it was fun to use
Right.
that. Gears of War, it was fun to use. I don't really play Gears of War much anymore,
But was
obviously.
it better as a T or was it better as the plate?
As the plate, I enjoyed it for those type of games. For
Okay.
hotkey and weapon switching, it was enjoyable. Anything else, it didn't do anything.
Yeah, so
It
did you
wasn't
play
very
many
helpful.
fighter games or many like 2D side scrollers?
Oh no, not at all.
Right, so for 2D side scrollers and stuff, it'd be horrible. It'd just be a
Oh yeah,
complete
because
waste.
it doesn't work right.
Like, you're better off just buying a fight stick, which I
Yeah,
don't think a lot of people want to do because they're expensive.
yeah.
Um, let's see what else is there to note about it. It's pretty unassuming. Like it looks so similar to the Xbox One controller.
It's really
I gotta
underwhelming. There's no upgrades.
yeah, I just gotta assume that it hasn't changed. Like I have to assume it hasn't
So
changed.
one of the upgrades to the Xbox One controller, I believe, was feedback in the triggers. And it boasted that for a lot of games, but I believe it only really worked very well for some exclusives in certain games that you'd feel some good trigger feedback and FPS shooting games, as other shooting games as well.
Right.
But from Xbox One to Series X, it just the controller just doesn't change at all. They didn't really upgrade it or think about putting in haptic feedback at all in any innovative way, as we see in the PS5 controller. Obviously,
That's
a
what I
lot of people
find
are loving the
really
DualSense
interesting.
controller.
I find that really interesting about the PlayStation controllers because they added that large touchpad a while back.
Hmm.
And I didn't really see it used too crazy.
Yeah, we can definitely go
experiencing?
into that when we talk about PlayStation.
For sure.
It's mostly used as a menu button, I believe. The sensor and the swipe isn't really useful at all.
Hmm.
I played Spider-Man. I loved it. I like having it, to be honest, but boasting it as a sensor is really weird. It's just a massive
Right.
button in my opinion, which I like, but the sensor
Okay,
aspect
so
is weird
they
because
haven't
when I
done
was playing
anything
Spider-Man, I enjoyed it a lot just being able to go in my menu by basically just slapping the middle of my controller wherever, and I was good
right.
to go. It was awesome.
So they haven't done anything crazy either. What I guess I was trying
The
to
haptic
cement,
feedback is what the PS5 controller is boasting in their
right?
next generation.
What I was trying to cement is the idea that they've updated the controls over the years, where Xbox
Hmm.
is just kind of it's been the same thing.
Yeah, it's the only really thing they've tried to change is like, I believe the material they use, so the feeling of it, the material of the joysticks, and just like the way it looks, kind of adding that button and changing the the D-pad. That was the only thing that really changed on the Xbox One, other than the triggers. They added some D-pad variants, I guess, if you had
Yeah,
the
it
Elite
doesn't seem like
controller.
anything crazy.
And the Elite controller is another one. The thing's so expensive for how garbage it is. I bought that thing and it fell apart, the first one.
right.
First edition Elite
So
controller, hot garbage.
more
I'll make a whole
into
video about that one.
we can definitely jump into that aspect as well. Is just how
Poorly made
reliable
Xbox
how
One controllers
reliable
where I had a lot of Xbox One controllers break on me.
well
It's
we can
kind
talk
of
about
ridiculous.
how reliable the consoles are just alone with the whole
Yeah.
360s and red rings and why there were so many iterations. I think that's another
Yeah.
thing that we can talk about is that Microsoft hasn't made very good consoles in a while because even though they got away from the red ring, like it's a thing of the past. I don't hear about Xbox One consoles dying as much, but initially I heard about disk scratching, um, the machines overheating. Like I believe that
The original Xbox One, I believe, had a very bad heating problem.
yeah, if you had
And
like in a small
the
cupboard, the thing
bat
would overheat almost immediately.
yeah, the power bank would get pretty hot too.
Right.
So
So
yeah, it's kind of scary too, because what do you want a hot ass power bank and
these
you're
machines are
scared that you'll have a
underpowered.
fire?
They're
Yeah.
pushing a bunch of heat. You don't know when these things are gonna die. The controllers are up and dying left and right. The
I
Elite
was so
controllers were.
disappointed in the level of how do you say, material build and just how it held up that went from the 360 to the one. My 360 controller, I could throw it a wall. I think dropped it 20 times. I probably fell asleep playing and like rolled on it and kicked it off my bed. That thing, I only had one Xbox 360 controller, bro. I never broke it. I don't know how. It was just reliable. It was amazing. The analog sticks didn't drift. Xbox One controllers, it's so ridiculous how quickly these things would drift. They're so poorly made. It
Yeah.
just makes for a
So
bad experience. If I'm playing an FPS, why do I want to have that?
something we
Especially
could say.
competitively.
Something we could say at Microsoft is that you guys need to actually up your game when it comes to your hardware because it's
Yeah,
very apparent that there's objective issues with your devices.
unreliable
With your
indeed.
consoles, there's a red ring and the disk scratching and the overheating. Hopefully, it's
Controllers
fixed.
definitely have taken a dive with the Xbox One. I
But
hope
yeah, the
with
controllers
Series
are
X that they're
just
somehow better. I'll
not as
test it
good.
someday when it comes out.
There's drifting. I personally feel like the controllers aren't as well made as I believe that as well. With my controller, I feel like it got smaller as well. I like the way
Then the
the
Xbox 360?
yeah the 360 controller fit better in my hand. I felt.
I thought
Um,
the 360 was smaller. The Xbox, it's like different. It's like I don't know. It's not as curved, and they made it try to make it look more like sleek,
yeah, because it's
I
more sleek,
suppose.
it's smaller in the hands.
Yeah, it is a
Um,
little bit. It's also
I
still heavy
personally
somehow.
I personally don't like the triggers as much. It feels like the triggers were made for like Forza, and the whole haptic feedback feels like a Forza thing. It seems very
Yeah,
much a car driving controller and not like a
it's
shooter.
not. It doesn't really provide a shooting feel. It doesn't really give you much feel when you're shooting. It's just vibrating.
Right.
I
I
don't know
felt like
how
the
that. It
360
doesn't give you that a
triggers
feel of
felt
it.
like a more of like a gun trigger. instead of a
Yeah, because
Plextor.
it just felt like there was resistance on the 360 controller, I remember.
Right.
You just felt that resistance, whereas this one, they try to give you that feeling, but it really doesn't do anything other than driving.
Right.
You
And
could definitely feel it in like dirt and other driving games too. When you're driving on all the muddy stuff,
right,
you're
it's really
driving through
cool.
rocks. You could feel in the triggers. But I don't
But how
play
many
those games
people?
constantly enough to make it
Yeah, how many
worth it,
people are gonna play
even
these
at all.
games?
Yeah,
So
'cause dirt is fun, but how long am I gonna play dirt for? I like FPS.
I think
Can't play
another
dirt
thing you can look
24/7.
into with Microsoft being sucking at consoles is who's your market? Why are you making controllers
Yeah,
for the driving market?
for yeah.
Why, like, what's the market
You
for these
started on
controllers?
shooters, FPSs, third-person shooters,
Right.
other games. It just doesn't make sense. If anything, you should have looked into haptic feedback. It felt like that was the route to go with the next generation, is to make
I
it as
feel
immersive as possible. That's what video games is supposed to be, right?
I feel like the next generation, if they really want to go in, they should have made their basic controller more like the Elite controller. Why does the Elite controller have so many options, cost so
Yeah,
much,
it
and
is,
offers so little?
and offers so little. Yeah, it just offers sticks, the back triggers, I guess you call them, and yeah,
So you
and the
have
D-pads
you have
don't
extra
really
options for movement
anything
stuff.
crazy.
You have the extra options
It
of
depends on the
shortcuts.
game if you're gonna use that though.
Right.
And also, are you gonna get used to shooting by clicking behind your controller when you're used to using RT your
Well, that's what I'm
entire
saying
gaming
is
career?
that
It's a weird thing to switch.
if you
So you gotta
make a
find
new
something.
device, if you push
Yeah.
a new device, if you try to make something new, something more exciting, and the whole ecosystem has to adopt it, right? So they tried this with the Kinect. They were trying to make
Yeah.
the Kinect a big thing. They tried so hard they basically sunk the Xbox One as a console generation by making it more expensive. Right? They
Yep.
wanted everyone to try this new Kinect. They want a new experience for people, a new way to control the game. And what happens? It failed.
It
But
flopped also because they didn't really support it. How many new games were they putting up for Kinect every
exactly,
month or two?
the support wasn't
Because I
there.
remember the only Kinect game I played was the first one that came with it. That
The
was
support
like
wasn't
some
there.
Island Rider, and it was meh.
The hardware
And
wasn't
it just,
there.
yeah, unsupported.
It was unreliable. Like these are,
Feels like they just put out the console and they kind of just forget about it. They
and that's the
update it as they
problem.
go, and it doesn't really do much.
And that's the problem
It's
is
on to the next, and they're just like, ah.
they suck at making consoles because of these reasons. They don't provide reliability, don't have any forethought. They just kind of toss it out there. It's a basic thing. At this point, an Xbox Series S or a Series X is a computer with Windows 10 on it and with a controller.
Yep.
Nothing crazy about it. There's nothing that makes it special
And it's
anymore.
getting more and more expensive, so what's the point? Why aren't these people just buying computers?
The simplicity. But
Yeah.
then if you say simplicity, the argument is that, well, they'll just get a PS5. That's what seems to be happening. A lot of people are moving
Yeah,
to the
that's why you
Sony
see
camp,
people change over a lot, a lot, a lot.
right?
Especially with exclusives, people just don't really care about Xbox anymore. They're not giving you many reasons to stay.
Oh, they really aren't.
Unsupported console, unsupported games, unreliable hardware. There's so many cons that I'm not seeing any reason to support anymore. That's why I
Right.
don't support the games I used to play.
There's not a whole reason to buy an Xbox console.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
what would they need to do to make you buy a new Xbox? What would they have to do hardware wise, ecosystem wise? What would they have to do aside from actual good games? What would you need to get from an
Other
Xbox
than
to buy?
games, it definitely needs to be easier to use. Funny enough, I found the Xbox One not that the menu wasn't easy to use, it just had so many problems. The Xbox parties were so bad. If you had, it's amazing that you could have a party with 4 people and you just randomly all start connecting and disconnecting, and you have to rejoin. And that's especially in the middle of a competitive game. Why do I want that to happen?
So,
If I'm playing
reliability.
a game, I'm squared up. It's another unreliable time with Xbox.
Yeah, so reliability is a
And
huge thing for you. I guess for me,
100%.
in closing thoughts, I guess for me, I would not be purchasing Xbox at any time soon, because I don't believe that they do anything better that a PC can't.
Yeah.
Their exclusives are all on PC at this point, which I'm happy playing on my computer because it gives me a lot more access to things. I feel like the Xbox ecosystem is just too closed in at this point. Their browser experience isn't good. Their software is not great. And I know that they crash a lot at this point. It's almost as if the reason for having an Xbox doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. And a lot of people are going to the route of, why do you need an Xbox if you could have a computer and play all those games? And
Right.
all my gaming experience I could get from having a personal computer and a PlayStation. I could play all the PlayStation exclusives and play any Microsoft game I want on my computer and all the computer games I want.
Exactly.
So the world of
So
gaming is there, and the Xbox just doesn't seem needed anymore.
at
They
this
gotta
point,
get themselves in there somehow.
do you say Xbox just continue making software, or do you say Xbox, here's what you need to do to fix it? What do you think?
To fix it, I think
No, I'm saying, do you think they should fix it, or do you think they should call it quits and just make games from now on? Just push them to PC.
That's a hard question. I don't know. I'd love to see an entire generation of gamers on Xbox playing all the games I loved playing growing up.
Right. So you think
Or
backwards
games,
compatibility would be a huge thing?
yeah, because that's a big thing that they do have that goes all the way back on the Series X, right?
Right.
But if it isn't going to be supported in the way that I'm seeing them constantly do, they don't give me a reason to trust them and think that they're actually going to produce what they say they're going to produce. So, I don't know. It's a hard one.
Personally, I think that if Xbox can't do anything with this console generation, they should just
I think
throw
this
in the
might be
towel.
make or break if that's what you're saying. If the
Yeah.
Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X flop, both of them, I think Xbox might be done though. I
I
don't know if there
say
is coming back from that. They didn't do great on the ones.
I say if you can't prove to us you got a reliable, functional console that really does what it needs to do, which is play games well, then you should just throw in the towel, push your software to PC, and call it a day.
Yeah. If I
So
could play all your games on a PlayStation and any
enjoy it.
exclusives you have on my computer and enjoy it, and it's reliable and it works, there's no reason to buy anything from Xbox.
Yeah, just move
So
on,
they
call it
they
a
really
day.
got to prove themselves.
All right. Well, I think that's a good start and end to the first episode. I hope
Yeah, definitely.
anyone listening enjoyed it, and I hope you guys comment in the comment section and start a nice dialogue, and we'll
Yeah,
see you
give us
guys
your
next time.
thoughts. I'm interested to see what you guys think. If you have differing thoughts, if you have something that you think we missed, I'd love to talk about it. I'm always interested in new topics. Other than that, hope you enjoyed the video.
All right, guys, take it easy.